Well, by now, most of you probably know that after a long courtship, Roanoke was able to attract Deschutes Brewery to the Star City. We know that they are one of the biggest craft brewers in the country, that they're planning to employ more than 100 people when they start construction in 2019, and many of you may even know the taste of their beer. But what else do we know about this company that the city worked so hard to get? I recently traveled across the country to Bend, Oregon to find out. Bend, Oregon, a growing, prosperous city of 80,000. Hip, outdoorsy, and home to Deschutes Brewing, which is settled on a tract of land along its namesake, the Deschutes River. The company started here in 1988 with the Deschutes Public House. In the beginning, the beer was both brewed and served here. At the time, it seemed like a risky venture.
I think the only reason people came out to see us was to watch us fail. It's kind of like a car wreck. You can't take your eyes off it. It's horrible, but you can't take your eyes off it.
Gary Fish is the founder and CEO of Deschutes. He started his business at one of the lowest points in Bend's history. The lumber mills that had driven the city's economy for decades were on the way out, and the city was some 30 years away from its newfound prosperity.
There were a lot of boarded up storefronts in downtown back then. The good news for us was property was inexpensive. The bad news was there was no people to come in and be customers.
Yet today, the original brew pub has undergone significant expansion. Most nights, it's hard to get a table.
Because you have to rest for just a moment.
And business is booming at the nearby brewery as well. Tourists flock in to see how Deschutes creates its popular line of beers, and new equipment is being added to keep up with demand.
We continue to grow. We're adding tanks on the backside of the building right now, 6,000 barrel fermenters, and then we doubled the size of our warehouse this year as well. We're putting in a new racking line this year and a new pilot brewery system where we can test different hops, different grains, different recipes, and really be better at inventing new types of styles and brands.
Here at Deschutes, they produce about 360,000 barrels of beer a year, and that sounds like a lot, but it's only about 0.7% of the entire U.S. beer market. It makes them big enough to produce a good quality product that they can supply their customers, but not so big that they haven't lost sight of who they are. And that's important to this company. Gary Fish tells me the corporate culture at Deschutes is as much a part of their success as their brewing methods, which include fresh hops, when many other companies use hops that are processed into pellets.
Being able to be creative and innovative and make something that really people would enjoy has always been exciting to me. The business part of the business, that's a necessity.
That culture and growth are tied directly to the success of Bend today. In fact, it's hard to say if Bend made Deschutes or if Deschutes made Bend.
Deschutes Brewery certainly has played an important part and a role in our growth and development here in Central Oregon.
It's Roger Lee's job to attract businesses to Bend.
I think for a number of years, people were identifying with Deschutes Brewery more than they were with Bend. So it had a better brand name perhaps than Bend did.
If Deschutes has had that impact on Bend, what might it have on Roanoke? There seems little doubt that the company is hoping to help Roanoke get to the next level.
As I mentioned, part of the reason that I think we ended up in Roanoke is because we could see that. And we could be a bigger part of the solution there.
So obviously a part of this company's appeal is not just the 108 jobs, but the vibe that it potentially brings to Roanoke, which is trying to brand itself as an outdoor destination. Well, for most of 2015, it seemed every few weeks or so we were asking ourselves whether Deschutes Brewery had decided where it would be locating, and more importantly, was it Roanoke? Well, we now know, of course, that the Star City was the choice and that the beer maker will start construction on a major facility in 2019. But why Roanoke? Did the grassroots Deschutes to Roanoke campaign really make a difference? Well, I traveled to the company's headquarters in Bend, Oregon to find out.
Actually, I received this box during the courting period, and some gentleman wrote a song, and he included the lyrics in the box, created a couple of CDs with the song.
Michael Lalonde shows us the box full of stuff Roanoke sent him during the time Deschutes was trying to determine the location of its East Coast operation. Someone even added the company's logo to some familiar downtown icons.
And then there's all kinds of letters. There's signs, just all kinds of cool stuff that was sent to us from people around Roanoke.
Around Bend, there are clues as to the company's preference in living. And at this company, the employees' taste and lifestyle is almost as important as that of the beer. Outdoor amenities like the ones people in Bend, Oregon enjoy here on the Deschutes River are something that employees mentioned, and a big reason that the company selected Roanoke.
We really believe in collaboration as an organization and getting different people involved so that you have an alignment in an organization that's really important to us.
The company needed an East Coast city which, like Bend, had good water, but they also needed a central location and transportation options, like interstates. Of course, they wanted good schools, a solid workforce, and then there was the X factor, the part that would make the company feel at home.
We looked at a lot of really terrific communities and beautiful communities, and and everybody's got some kind of economic package they're offering. It's like, set that stuff aside. Let's figure out what we need, because a year after we're open, that kind of stuff will be pretty meaningless. We need to figure out where we are supposed to be.
And remember what home is like there in Bend, where amazing outdoor adventure opportunities surround the city. You have really happy employees.
We work at a brewery and we live in Bend, Oregon. If you're not happy, I don't know, something's wrong.
So then we started going out and visiting. We started with about 30 different properties that we went and physically looked at with about 5 or 6 different people from our senior management team.
But this is a company where employees hang around after work, enjoying the fruits of their labor. And the company's culture club, made up of workers from every part of the operation, also came to visit Roanoke and the other finalists. Here, they went mountain biking. They hiked to Dragon's Tooth. They partied in downtown.
They came out, looked at the different properties, and then we came back to Bend, and as a group, we basically made a decision and went around the room and heard everybody's input on why they liked Roanoke. And then at about the same time, we had hashtag Deschutes to Roanoke campaign going on, which really felt good to us.
The people were as warm and generous and welcoming in Roanoke as any place we visited. And it continued, and the kind of grassroots campaigns that developed out of the community itself, they weren't people who were being paid to recruit us. They were people that genuinely thought we should be there.
We felt great about a town who really wanted us to come there, and it had all the attributes that we were looking for. And so we made that decision, and it's been great ever since.
And so a lot of people wanted to know, did it make a difference? And in the end, the Deschutes to Roanoke campaign did make a difference. I don't know if it was the overriding factor, but it, along with our outdoor amenities, may have separated Roanoke from some of the other finalists, and ultimately they chose Roanoke.
So Deschutes has the opportunity to play a big role in Roanoke and kind of reshaping and forming kind of what's to come.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the 108 jobs. That's almost beside the point. When you take a look really at the impact that the company has had there in Bend and the similarities between Bend and Roanoke, there is a reason for optimism, and we'll take a closer look at that starting tomorrow night at 6. In the meantime, we've posted a lot of additional information and interviews at WSLS.com. Well, yesterday I told you about the history of Deschutes Brewing, about its unique corporate culture and how the company chose to come to Roanoke. Well, recently I traveled to Bend, Oregon to look at how Deschutes has helped transform Bend into one of the fastest growing communities in the nation, with the idea of looking at how it might be able to have a similar impact here in Virginia. Outdoor enthusiasts naturally seem to flock to Bend, Oregon. It's because of the region's amazing natural attractions, like the Deschutes River, and an amazing network of trails for hiking and biking.
Going to see if we can find some trails somewhere. We rode our bikes and hope to get some miles in.
And there's something else.
The beer last night at Deschutes Brewery last night. Yep.
The city's famous ale trail is front and center at the city's Visitors Bureau.
I think the craft beer culture is just synonymous with who we are as a community now.
Kevney Dugan is CEO of Visit Bend. He told us about the city's ale trail, where visitors make stops at 10 to 15 craft breweries, usually over a series of visits to Bend, in order to earn a locally made souvenir called a silly pint.
Yeah, pliable silicone pint glass.
Increasingly, he says, the city's beer and outdoor culture are turning tourists into residents and residents into businesses.
Nationally, you're seeing a lot of that movement where people are really saying, you know, day in, day out, what do I want to be doing? In a place like Bend, you know, it's big enough to have the amenities you need or would want. You know, we have great dining, great craft beer, great craft distilleries, and on top of that, there's great quality of life during your downtime.
While the outdoors has obviously always been in Bend, Deschutes Brewery has only been there since 1988. The beer culture began with Deschutes, which seems to have meshed seamlessly with the outdoors. I went for a mountain bike ride with Deschutes digital marketing manager Jason Randalls along 10 miles of the Deschutes River. He says the outdoors permeates the company's culture.
Culture is such a huge thing for us at the brewery, a huge part of who we are, so wanted to make sure that the town, our East Coast location, fit kind of that similar vibe, and especially with the outdoors. You know, some of us joke that the environment, the outdoors, is kind of like that fifth element in our beer.
And company leaders say when they get to Roanoke, they want the valley's environment to bring that same vibe to their East Coast operation. But they also want to help Roanoke capitalize on its outdoor amenities just as Bend has. Are you going to bring a little bit of Bend to Roanoke?
We think so. I think Roanoke is probably ahead of where Bend was back then in 1988. I think last time I went to Roanoke, downtown seemed more vibrant than when we first visited there.
Run back and do that loop.
Roger Lee, in charge of economic development for Central Oregon, says Roanoke is lucky to get Deschutes.
They have been such an excellent corporate citizen as well. It's not just about producing beer, but I think it's about, you know, they're very engaged in making this place a better community, and I think Roanoke will definitely feel that.
And Deschutes CEO and founder Gary Fish says they chose a place where they hoped they could make an impact.
We know that we can be a participant in the community just by being who we are, and we expect that to happen in Roanoke. As I mentioned, part of the reason that I think we ended up in Roanoke is because we could see that, and we could be a bigger part of the solution there.
But he is careful not to suggest that Roanoke needs Deschutes, only that it appears to be a good match.
To say Roanoke needed us is really not, I mean, that kind of belittles the relationship. That's not the point. The point is we can be who we are better, I think, in Roanoke. And for lack of a better term, that's why we picked it.
Good way to put it.
So there you go. This is a company that everybody told me out there is just a great corporate citizen.
So when do we get an ale trail?
Well, actually, we did one in Roanoke for a month this year, and I've talked with some of the people over at Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge, and they are seriously looking at that. But, you know, there's a lot of other similarities. You know, Bend lost, they were a big logging town, and Roanoke was a big railroad town. And they lost the logging, and we lost the railroad. They have a river, we have a river, they have mountains, we have mountains. And tonight at 11 o'clock, we'll be looking at the similarities between the two towns. We've also actually done some cost comparisons about the cost of living and that type of thing, and all that's on WSLS.com. Bend, Oregon, home to Deschutes Brewing, is a thriving community that's among the fastest growing in the United States. That's important because Deschutes will be building its East Coast facility here beginning in 2019. And the brewery has had an amazing impact on Bend's economy, and I wanted to find out if it might have the same impact here.
Give a little brake check out, just lean back into it.
When I wanted to know about the history of Bend, Oregon, the home of Deschutes Brewery, I couldn't resist a tour given on Segways. The first order of business, however, is how to ride one without falling off.
There you go.
Perfect.
Once trained, we headed off, mindful of the new Bend that we were seeing all around us, the Bend that has sprung forth over the past 30 years. The city's resurgence started in the late 80s, in part because of the establishment of Deschutes as a then small craft brewery.
This is so beautiful.
Add in significant outdoor attractions and amenities, growing tech and manufacturing sectors, and you see the Bend of today, a long way from the one that was dying when the timber industry went away.
The buildings were torn down in 1987.
Vanessa Ivey with the Deschutes County Historical Society led our group along the river, which is now home to parks, greenways, an in-river kayak park, and posh homes under construction. Not far away, the building beneath the smokestacks is the heart of what's called the Old Mill District. Once a factory, it is now home to an REI outdoor retail store, a perfect example of the cultural shift from Milltown to Brew Mountain Town. It was not so long ago that lumber mills were situated on either side of the Deschutes River, which was jammed with logs starting with the timber boom in 1916 and not ending until the mid-1980s.
As the logs were milled, they were deposited in the river down by Farewell Bend Park. They were floated up the stream to the mills, and then they were distributed.
So when you think about it, Roanoke was a railroad town that lost the railroad. Bend was a lumber town that lost the mills. There's a lot of similarities there, and both cities have outdoor attractions. What we're learning about on this Segway tour is more about the history of Bend, and we'll be looking for similarities with Roanoke. Like Roanoke, Bend has a river flowing through the middle of it. Both have mountain bike trails only minutes from downtown. Both have mountains surrounding them, though Bend's nearby Mount Bachelor is, well, higher. Roanoke has a growing craft beer culture with 2 breweries in the city limits, but Bend, with 22, is a bit more mature. Bend's amenities have made it and Deschutes County among the fastest growing in Oregon in 2015 and the 7th fastest in the United States. But all of that took time.
So it's one of those 30-year overnight success stories where we just, we had very hard times in the early 80s when the kind of last of the wood products companies shut down here.
Which begs the question, could Roanoke do what Bend did?
In my experience, there's 2 directions they go: outdoor recreation and tech.
Deschutes CEO and founder Gary Fish seems to have a handle on how these things go.
We want to attract the clean business, the clean industry. We just came, out of a phase where, it was kind of the dirty industry, the heavy industrial phase of our development. So we want to swing away from that, and we're going to attract, all the tech companies, the clean industry that doesn't leave a mark but generates a lot of economic activity. Well, there's only every other community in the country that's trying to do exactly that same thing.
Roanoke started trying about 6 years ago with an intense effort to market itself as an outdoor destination, and arguably it's working. The recruitment of Deschutes, a great example. Could Roanoke, trying to go from trains to brains in what's being called a mountain metro environment, become to Virginia what Bend is to Oregon? It's too early to tell. But Deschutes is coming because of the similarities they saw between their home city and the Star City. And they're making no bones about the fact they hope to bring a little bit of Bend with them. So, a lot of similarities between the two cities, right?
Maybe we can get a Segway tour too.
Well, you know
That's
what?
pretty cool.
Maybe we could. So now, if Bend does have a downside economically speaking, it's because it does have a limited workforce. We have more workers here in Roanoke, and it's also isolated in the middle of the state, making transportation difficult. Roanoke has better transportation, a central location on the East Coast. We're so close to Philly and Washington and all that, and we have the Blue Ridge Parkway, and they don't.
It's so interesting to see, you know, back to back Bend and then Roanoke, and then just all the similarities there. It was a great way to visualize that. So how did you like the Segway tour?
That was interesting. I could totally see us doing that on the greenways here.
That would be really cool.
It would be.
It looked fun too.
It was a lot of fun. All right.
All right. Well, thank you, John. Well, thank